I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Hello and welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I'm really honored that I get to introduce to you women that inspire me, women that are change makers, women that have overcome many things in their lives and stepped into their power to bring their passion to the planet. And so what's great about that for me is that I get to be inspired, re-inspired by them, and you get to see the possibilities. You get to see that no matter what you come through, no matter where you've been, something extraordinary is possible for you. We are on once a week, and we're on Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon, YouTube. Subscribe and come back and see an extraordinary woman. My guest today is someone I met recently at a women's retreat, and I am so excited to introduce her to you. Her name is Pauline Nguyen. She's an award-winning author, highly sought-after international speaker, and one of the most grounded spiritual entrepreneurs around the globe. Huffington Post. Pauline is one of Australia's most successful entrepreneurs, but with a little bit of a difference. She is inspiration with substance. She teaches with warmth and humor, telling her own story of what can be achieved through key alignment of thoughts and intentions. And she has a high-performing Western business background combined with an Eastern slant of spirituality. Pauline is a best-selling author and award-winning businesswoman, and her achievements are all the more impressive for her highly deep experience of escaping from Vietnam on a boat and survived a Thai refugee camp. She has overcome these adverse beginnings to transform her approach to re-engineering her beliefs, questioning the status quo, and hacking cultural norms. Pauline has become a master of her thoughts, behaviors, and emotions, and approached everything with an unshakable spirit. So listen to this. Her day-to-day professional life was in orbit around her life principles and not the other way around. This self-actualization has carried her to prosperity while running the awarded restaurant Red Lantern, the most awarded Vietnamese restaurant in the world, and authoring bestseller Secrets of the Red Lantern. Her unique philosophy also inspired her newest release, The Way of the Spiritual Entrepreneur. Pauline, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Cynthia, and thank you for that introduction. I hope that it does give your listeners a taste of what is possible. That's what your podcast is all about, of what's possible. To go back to understand where I came from and what it took to get here. It's a wonderful example for all your listeners of what is possible. What is possible for us.
Yes. And I want to start with where you came from, because my listeners, I came from a pretty traumatic childhood. And a lot of the people that I've interviewed have come through, challenging childhoods to create extraordinary lives. So just tell us about your childhood, and then we want to get into what you're doing today, because I've had the experience of your extraordinary work.
Oh, thank you, Cynthia. I think also that it's important that we don't leave out those who have not experienced hardship. Mm-hmm. The ones who have not experienced hardship at all are so fortunate to have such a wonderful life, having sturdy parents, a great upbringing. But the truth does remain that every next level of our life will demand a next level version of us, right? And so we have to continually find places and situations that will call upon the next level version of ourselves. And so I just didn't want to leave out any of the listeners who haven't gone through as much hardship as we have. My father was in the Vietnam War. And when Saigon fell to communist rule, he needed to escape Vietnam. The one thing that he wanted to escape the most was the re-education camps. And he would say that it's not enough that they want to take our freedom, they want to take our thoughts as well. He would have been re-educated or brainwashed, and that was what he wanted to avoid the most. So he and his friends built a boat and smuggled 12 of us out to sea, 6 adults, 6 children. I was 3 years old. My brother Lewis was 2. We spent 9 days at sea. We were the lucky ones. We were the first to escape before the pirates caught wind of the bounty that will be at sea in the years following. So we escaped the rape, the torture, the torment of the pirates. Not too many of my countrymen and women experienced the same. We ended up in Thailand, where we spent a very difficult year in a refugee camp. My mother gave birth to my brother Luke in a tent in the refugee camp. And in 1978, Australia finally accepted us. And so we came into this new world with nothing. My father suffered terribly from PTSD because of his own upbringing and because of his own experience of war. And so growing up in Australia as a young child, not only did we have to experience all the hardship that our parents experienced, but at home, it was incredibly violent. My father had nowhere to dump his anger but on us kids, on my mother. And so memories of my childhood all the way up to my early teens, when I finally ran away from home, was a whole lot of mental, emotional, physical, spiritual abuse. And at the same time, my father had an entrepreneurial streak. So he just was so determined to create a life for himself, to make sure that the sacrifices my mother and he made were honored. So he was quite the entrepreneur. He opened a restaurant, an ice cream parlor, a cafe, a video library. He had a driving school as well on the side, and us kids provided the child labor. So at home, it was incredibly violent, but we were forced to work. I started working full time when I was 7. My brothers worked full time as well. So it was working full time, school full time. So we would go to school. Before school, we would help set up the restaurant, the cafe, the video library. We set up all of that. We went to school. We came home. We came back to the restaurant. We cleaned up after lunch service, set up after dinner service, caught the bus back home, and did our homework. And we had to get good grades as well. And if we didn't get good grades, if we didn't work to the degree of perfection that my parents wanted, we were beaten up. So that was my upbringing. And I look back at that now. And I see it as my training.
Yes. Yes. And let me just ask you something, because I've been in your presence. Was there a part of you as a child that knew that this was not going to be your life, that there was going to be something else that you were going to create?
Yeah, I had no idea what I was going to create. I just knew that I had a streak of rebellion. I was a very good child, never mucked around, because I would be beaten. Mm-hmm. But I think it comes with, there comes a time when I looked at my friends at school, my friends in high school, they were all going out, they were all having a good time, where for me and my brothers, it was work, homework, get good grades, get locked in the house. We were literally locked in the house. And so there was a time I was like, this is not right. This is not going to be how I live my life. And, as a teenage girl, there was a lot of prayer. There was a lot of hope. There was a lot of fantasy and imagination. And every night it was, this can't be my life. There must be a better way than this. This can't be my life. And I lived in fear, basically. I know what fear smells like. There was constant fear of, and, they weren't hard slaps either. It was really violent abuse, as well as the humiliation and all of that that comes with a father figure that is a tyrant and suffers so much. So I ran away because I knew this, if I stayed here, this is not how I want to live. And I'll probably, it was that innate drive that says there must be a better life than this. I didn't know what that life was. I just knew that I needed the freedom. Freedom is one of my greatest desires and values.
Yeah, I feel like you're a sister from another mother, because I had the same kind of feelings, and I want to talk about your spiritual bridge, but I want to talk about the fact that early childhood and working in the restaurant and all that stuff supported you and your brother in creating this amazing restaurant that is like people line up to to be there. Talk to me about what happened with you and your brother to create this, because he's like a award-winning chef. Yes.
He's quite well known. His name's Nguyen. He has quite the profile around the world. He's got plenty of cookbooks and television shows. And so growing up in the restaurant, Luke is 4 years younger than myself. And so actually 3 years and a bit younger than myself. So he is a, what can I say, badass manifester. I remember as a child, he already had his bucket list. His greatest passion was wanting, because we grew up in restaurants in what was the first wave of Vietnamese immigrants as well. So he always had this desire to bring Vietnamese food to mainstream, but not in the home style cooking, formica tables, kitsch decor. We both have training in fine dining restaurants, sommeliers, working under the tutelage of some of the greatest chefs in Sydney. And so we really wanted to bring Vietnamese cuisine and up-level it, matched with professional world-class service, an amazing wine list, and the home style kitsch decor restaurants has their space. We just didn't want to be that. We wanted to up level, upgrade it. And that was always one of his bucket lists. Travel the world and become a well-known chef. That was on his bucket list as well. And so my background is actually in film and television. That's what I studied at university. And after living abroad for a number of years, I came back to Australia, and my brother was wanting to open his own restaurant, and I was only going to assist for a couple of years because I'm a creative. I'm a filmmaker. I was terrible at it. I couldn't be told what to do, Cynthia. I knew then, it's like, oh, okay, something's wrong with me. I can't have a boss. And it's something that I totally accept now. It's like, I actually can't have a boss. I have to be the boss. And that was discovered very early on when I worked for other people. And so we opened Red Lantern over 20 years ago. And the awards kept coming, and we're still around today, having survived a multitude of economic downturns and this thing called COVID. and we're still here because we have more grit than anyone else we know. Resilience, courage, and grit. And this all comes from, as you said, our upbringing. I look back and I see that as my training.
Yeah. Well, I think it's exquisite, and I want to talk about the fact that you are also a manifester, but I want to talk about at the retreat that we were at. You did some amazing spiritual work with the ladies, and I believe that transformation takes place at the spiritual level. So it was exquisite to see what you were doing, and I know you do retreats and all of this, but I really want to talk about, how did you move from opening restaurant, school, film training, to just stepping into this spiritual space where you're a leader, a teacher, and a healer?
It comes from multiple lifetimes past. And I, my brothers were the only ones who really witnessed it as a child. I would share with them premonitions. I would share with them warnings, visions that I had. And that was intense when I was younger. I think from the age of 5 till about 6 or 7, it was intense during that time. But by 7, 8 years old, that's when the beatings started. And so that was shut down, dumbed down, all the way up to my teenage years. I ran away from home, hid from my father for many years. And then it was all about survival. It was all about getting myself through university, surviving at work. I partied a lot. And so I really think that the knock on the door to say, Pauline, there's more to life than this. There's more to you than this. There's more to you to explore than this, was when I decided to have my first child. I was traveling the world. I was partying. I was smoking. And then when it no longer became about myself and about someone else and something bigger, overnight, that all stopped. And what do I mean by that? When I was partying so much, it was, that constant, I'll quit smoking tomorrow. And you never do, right? It just, I'll quit partying. But as soon as it no longer became about me and about what I wanted to create, overnight, it stopped. And that was the real opening to the curiosity of diving deeper into who I really am. And it all starts with permission, right? The permission that we give ourselves first, and then we give permission to the field, to our teachers, and for our expansiveness. So in my first book, which was also an award-winning book called Secrets of the Red Lantern, I dedicate it to my daughter, Mia Angel, who came to save me in the nick of time. And she did. She came to save me in the nick of time.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, I adopted my children because there were some physical challenges, but I believe that they were angels that were sent to my life to help me become more grounded and anchored. So I want to, you and I kind of talked briefly at the conference, but I really want to talk about some of the healing work that you do, because us being with you, especially at the lake and doing the rituals, why are rituals important to your work, and why do you think it's important for us to have that as a part of our lives?
Yes, and so I believe that I prefer ceremony than ritual.
Okay.
I believe that there are too many rituals. Rituals leave no room for interpretation in terms for currency, for flavor. And I'm one of those teachers, Cynthia, who the really traditional teachers dislike because I like to keep it current. I have absolute respect for tradition and ritual, but you know what? It's now 2022. Can I put some of the current flavor on it?
Yes.
Can I make it not so pompous? Can I make it not so dramatic? And you know what? We're trying to share what we know with as many people as possible who are ready. And so the more perspectives we can hold, the more free we will become. And so I believe there are a number of teachers here today who want to share the spirituality, it having nothing to do with religion. For me, spirituality is about being inspired and inspired. And I believe that it needs to be open to ceremony. And so with ceremony, we can be ceremonious celebration. And that involves, okay, who is my audience today? Who are my students today? I need to be flexible enough, skillful enough, be able to understand human behavior, be able to read the circumstance enough, and craft my teachings to whoever is in front of me so that I can amplify and expand the message, versus the other way around, where some other teachers are so pompous and say, this is the tradition, and this is what you must fit into. I think there's a time and place for that as well. But that's not what I like to do. And so the ceremony is, the ceremony on the lake, for example, was so beautiful. If you want to swim, swim. If you want to take your shoes off, take your shoes off. If you want to sing, sing. But I will be here to guide you. I will be here to expand the space for you. And I won't stop. I won't stop. And I think that was a 2.5 hour session or something. And I'll hold the space to expand. So being able to be flexible in that respect. So I love the word ceremony over to ritual, but through ceremony, we can show them parts of the ritual. And so we don't leave anyone out, or we don't be so polarizing, because my intention always is to meet people where they're at. Yes. Rather than have them come and meet me, because I'm learned for decades, lifetimes. So I think that's really important, that we are able to be ceremonious and celebrate in ceremony rather than ritual. But the importance of ceremony is so that we can give everyone a taste of the ritual and not make it such a bitter pill to swallow.
That's beautiful. How beautifully said. I think that's exquisite. I want to talk just a little bit. You have a new book called The Spiritual Entrepreneur.
The Way of the Spiritual Entrepreneur.
The women, several of the women that watch our podcast are entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs. And, I've had a lot of guests, and we talk about the fact that you being anchored in who you are mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, it's a wholeness, right? So from your point of view, what is the way of the spiritual entrepreneur?
So I wrote the book because I'm an award-winning entrepreneur who used to do things the old way. The old way being, we have to put on, as women, I very rarely say as women, but to illustrate this point, we have to put on all this armor. We have to fight the fight. Or as a boss, you have to be the first one there and the last one to leave. And it was so much hardness. There was so much hardness and inflexibility. Whereas the new way, and I speak through direct experience, the new way is so that we can be something bigger than ourselves. We don't have to fight this fight anymore. Can you find ways to move mountains with the gentlest of touch? And so the book is called The Way of the Spiritual Entrepreneur, The 7 Secrets to Becoming Fearless, Stress-Free, and Unshakable in Business and in Life. It won Best Entrepreneurship and Small Business Book Award in the year that it was released, because I think entrepreneurs are the eternal warriors of the world. We have the resources, the grit, the audacity, and also we're addicted to solving problems. We just can't help ourselves. I was speaking to one of my mentors the other day who loves to poke me. He loves to poke me and goes, Pauline, you entrepreneurs, what is it all about? You love taking risk and you love taking something and making the invisible visible. It's so hard. Why don't you just go work for someone else? Because we can't help it.
Exactly.
That's my answer. I can't freaking help it. If you want a safe life, if you want to go working for go ahead, but that's not what we do. It's this consistent, there's a problem. What can I do about that? What can I create? Who can I collaborate with? What can how can I make the invisible visible? And it's just that, right? But now there's new ways of doing things and new way of seeing things. And then there's also new reasons for doing and seeing things differently. So many entrepreneurs who first come into my orbit, they come to me because they are diseased or diseased. They live a life of stress. They don't think they are fearful, but that's what stress is, right? It's fear. And they are so anxious and overwhelmed. They're not anchored in themselves. And so they're easily shaken. And so the way of the spiritual entrepreneur allows you to fear less, allows you to stress a whole lot less, and understanding yourself so deeply that no one can hack you.
Yes.
Let's face it, everyone's trying to hack us. Other people, Google, Facebook, Instagram, people are just trying to hack us. But you know what? What if I know myself so deeply that I am unshakable? And so that's what fearless, stress-free, and unshakable is. And what does that all lead to? That all leads to why we are here on this earth. This is the way of the spiritual entrepreneur. We are here to do three things: to evolve. We have to do the inner work as well as the outer work to continually evolve, to find ways to push humanity forward, to push our humanity forward, and to do it with joy, to do it with joy. And it's the joy part that people forget about, right? Because the old way of entrepreneurship, there was so little joy.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
And
I
this is
love
the new
that.
way.
So how do people find you? How do they find your books?
My book is everywhere. It's also on Audible if you want to listen to me narrate it in my sexy voice. Otherwise, my website, paulinenguyen.com.au.
Beautiful. So I ask my guests the same last question. This program is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the importance of women awakening on the planet at this time? The most important thing?
From my experience, I think that we need to let go of the stories of the past. We need to let go of the stories of the past that no longer serve us. And so feminism, I believe, was absolutely necessary. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here doing what I do. Many of us wouldn't be here to do what we do. I think it was absolutely necessary, but I don't think it is sufficient any longer.
Yes.
It's no longer sufficient. We have to change the paradigm of conversation because we cannot fight separatism with more separatism.
Exactly.
Now is the time for oneness. Now is the time for wholeness. There is no more external fight. I believe that fight now is an internal one. And so it's only through the work of constant internal revolution can we truly influence an external evolution. And so we need to change the conversation. The conversation needs to change. And so we have to resist the temptation to be confined by the past, because every next level of our life is going to demand a very next level version of us. And so can we be softer when we don't need to fight anymore? It's now the time to really stand in our femininity. Yeah. And that means taking off some of the armor that we've been putting on all these years, because we're not meant to be tight and controlling. Yeah. We're meant to be free and radiant. We're meant to sing and dance and flow, right, Cynthia?
Yes, absolutely.
We're meant to be compassionate and nurturing and focusing on our inherent intuition and embracing the wisdom of the feminine. And we're meant to focus on love and praising one another. And so I think the greatest focus on our evolution is to go within and celebrate our femininity without the same conversation about feminism. Yes. And so It's about oneness and wholeness, and about being able to now move mountains with the gentlest of touch.
I love that. Oh, Pauline, thank you so much for being here. You're so inspiring, and and you're such a wonderful teacher. And thank you. Really grateful to introduce you to my tribe.
Cynthia, the joy and the privilege was mine. Thank you so very much.
So, ladies, I'm going to say the same thing I say to you every week. You are a masterpiece. You are exquisite. You are extraordinary. You are undefinable. You are unique. You are unrepeatable. So you get to take this life expression and do with it extraordinary things to bring your gifts and your talents and your light and your love to this planet. However that wants to express, that calling, that urge wants to emerge. So I say, step up, step out, bring your voice, bring your light. You are needed on the planet at this time.